This is the Daily Night for Monday, June 27, 2016. The Daily Night supports Making Biscuits Cat Rescue, a 501c3 charity. If you like this podcast, please consider making a donation or adopting a rescue cat at makingbiscuits.org. I'm your host, Gerardo San Diego, and it's been very, very busy lately. Sorry I haven't been on, at least on the Daily Night podcast, for more than a month now. I've been doing the podcast to be named later with Phil Barron for the last 3 weeks. We've been talking about Game of Thrones and whatever else came up to mind. We're trying a new format, but I think that format is going to be more interactive. We beta tested a quick Facebook Live session today, and it worked out really good. So we're probably going to do the podcast to be named later as a more free-form, interactive sort of thing compared to the Daily Night with just me. And the Daily Night is going to be more, how would you say, more introspective, I guess, one way, for want of a better description. I know, I love to interact with people, but sometimes it's like it will take forever if I try to go through all of the stories and ideas that I want to talk about, and there's more than one person in the room. It'll take us probably 3 hours to talk about everything. As you can hear from the podcast to be named later with Phil, we just talk about, like an hour, 15 minutes just on Game of Thrones. Like, I can't do that with just by myself. I'll run out of steam, or I'll get bored. So I think that's the format. We're trying to carve out enough time to produce both. Hopefully there's enough topics going on. So that's it basically. So here we are, the Daily Night, and today's show, I'm going to talk about a little bit of my insights or musings or my own personal thoughts about the Game of Thrones Season 6 finale. I guess geekier, more personal thoughts for my own. Not to take away from the discussion with Phil, we went over more thoroughly of the whole show. I think I'm just going to touch on a few parts. And also, I'm going to talk about the pedigree of Star Wars. A friend of mine, actually David, shout out to David, who is the Geek Federation president, a club that I belong to. We're all geeks. And David asked me, why do you have confidence in the upcoming Star Wars movies? Like Rogue One, Episode 8. We all know how, Episode 7 it was very, very, very successful, to say the least. And even with all the Rogue One rumors going on, I'm really not that worried about it. And David asked me, he's like, why aren't you worried about it? And I said, the Star Wars pedigree is strong right now. The Star Wars pedigree is the same style, the same spirit as were in the episodes 4, 5, and 6. Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. And episode 7, The Force Awakens, captured that, or at least started to capture that. And I think they now have a sort of a template to use. And they have the talent. Lawrence Kasdan being the big one. So I'll talk about that. And, the legacy of Star Wars. So I'll be talking about that later on in the show. And a whole bunch of other stuff. If you look at the bullet points I have on the website, the podcast website, thedailynight.net, thedailynight with a K.net, you'll see I'm going to talk about a whole bunch of other geeky things, and then a lot about Game of Thrones and the pedigree of Star Wars, and I want to talk about Justice League, the upcoming movie. I'm very excited about. So here we go. Let me see. Oh! You know what? Actually, the GeekSwag, the company I work with to create Geeky Swag, the place where geeks get their swag. We're on to phase whatever. We're expanding the line. We're going to design more party paraphernalia. Like if you have a Star Wars party or a Game of Thrones party, especially for kids, we want to create little embellishments, enhancements, like maybe banners or placemats or little affordable little costumes and name tags, you name it. Just little stuff that you buy for a party to make the party's theme stand out more. And so that's another push that we're trying to get going. Let me see. We want to do more T-shirts. Speaking of which, if you check either the link on this website, thedailynight.net, or you check the Daily Night's Facebook page at, I always want to make sure when I'm on the Daily Night. Let's see, Facebook.com, the Daily. Okay, yeah, Facebook.com/the Daily Night, and you'll, let me see, scroll down, and actually I will post it. Oh, there it is. It's there. Look for a YouTube video of some of the T-shirts that we've made. I found an old garage band mix that I did like 10 years ago on the Peter Gunn theme. You know, the Peter Gunn dun 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 dun. So I made a quick thing of that, and then I put that music to the slideshow of some of the GeekSwag T-shirts. So you'll see that on the thedailynight.net or facebook.com/thedailynight with a K, of course. What else? Whole bunch of stuff. That's why I haven't been on in about a month, more than a month. I decided to join the Lions Club, of all things. I'm almost definitely getting old now, and it's like time for me to do this stuff as opposed to I don't know what young people do anymore. It's been a while. So I joined the Lions Club, and we're going to have a fireworks stand. It's part of the fundraiser to raise money for the Lions Club pretty much for the whole year. So more information on that. Probably in addition to this podcast, if you really care that much about other stuff that I do, go to the Daily Night's Facebook page, and you'll see some updates on the other stuff. Of course, 99% of the stuff I do, if not 100% of the stuff I do for the Daily Night, goes towards charity. Any money I make, even with the GeekSwag T-shirts and posters and whatever, for the most part, 99 to 100%, probably more 100%, will go to charity. Making Biscuits, Cat Rescue, and if there's a disaster around the world, on the other side of the world, sometimes I'll send, like, depends on how much money I have that month. I will send from like $25 or $50 to $100 just to help the Red Cross, UNICEF, Save the Children. There's a long list of good people that you can give money to, or even whatever. Donate blood. Go to your local hospital and ask if they have a blood drive, and just go there. It's safe. You can also go to some farmers markets, and they have those blood drive vans. And then you get like a free cookie and orange juice, and then you get like a discount on movie tickets. Sometimes they give you, and you'll feel good about yourself. All right, so with that out of the way, let's talk about Game of Thrones. Haha, Game of Thrones. I didn't get to talk about Battle of the Bastards, which is episode 9 last week, and pretty much everybody talked about it. There's basically, Phil and I talked about it on the podcast to be named later. There were basically two settings. There was Marine and Winterfell. And I just wanted to add on this podcast how the battle at Winterfell absolutely reminded me of some movies that I've seen. And it's almost as if David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, the showrunners of Game of Thrones, almost they watched these movies and they Picasso said that good artists copy but great artists steal, and it's almost as if they stole in a good way from these other movies. I'm gonna bring them up. So a lot of people are talking about even the showrunners of Game of Thrones mentioned that they took a lot from Henry V, the Kenneth Branagh movie. When was it? In the late 80s or early 90s. If you haven't seen it yet, go watch it. That's basically where in my opinion, that's where that type of movie battle started. Henry V, Kenneth Branagh directed it. He was Henry V. Shakespeare. It's probably, in my opinion, the least boring Shakespeare movie I've ever watched. And the battle scenes is awesome. Braveheart, Mel Gibson's Braveheart came after that, and they did the same thing where battle is bloody and muddy and dark and dank and not heroic at all. And everything is very intimate, close up, and you felt the effort that these fighters were putting through. It wasn't all posing and swinging your sword, haha. It's slogging around the mud, cold, wearing your heavy, sticky, sweaty, stinky body armor and chainmail, and trying to lift your sword for the 200th time to go kill a guy while he's trying to kill you. And the reality of it is, it's amazing. Henry V started it, and I think I remember Braveheart followed it, and then Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings movies really amplified it. Especially, let's see, the battle in the Two Towers, the middle movie, the battle at what was that one? Something Keep, the small castle. That was the most brutal feeling. So and Game of Thrones, which is the latest incarnation of these types of battles, paid homage to it. Amazing. For a TV show, I've never seen anything this good on a TV show, and rarely have I seen anything this good in a movie. What else? Braveheart, Return of the King, and not a medieval type movie, but a American Civil War movie, Glory, with Matthew Broderick, Denzel Washington, and what's his name? I keep forgetting his name. Morgan Freeman, where it's about the Civil War battle, the first African American soldiers who actually fought in the Civil War. There was one scene in Game of Thrones, Battle of the Bastards, where it's Sir Davos and Tormund are talking in the camp the night before the battle, and they're talking about how nervous they are and how they cannot sleep the day before the battle, and how both men had sort of different approaches to how to prepare for a battle. And it reminded me of the campfire scene in the movie Glory. If you've seen the movie Glory, You know what I'm talking about, and if you haven't seen the movie Glory, go watch it, please. Uh, it's one of those. It's like Shawshank Redemption. If it's like you gotta see the movie. So it's Glory. It's with Denzel Washington, Morgan Freeman, Cary Elwes, and Matthew Broderick. Um, and how they talked around the campfire about real soldiers being scared to death of having to fight the next day, and how they try to keep their morale up, and just the whole reality of it. So those four movies reminded me of when I was watching Game of Thrones: The Battle of the Bastards, Henry V, Braveheart, Return of the King, or even The Two Towers, Lord of the Rings, and Glory. So, with that out of the way, let me talk about the finale, episode 6, and I am now 15 minutes into the podcast, and hopefully you are still staying with me, all you. I don't know how many listeners I have, like 50. Totally fine with it, because I got a great compliment from somebody on Facebook. So thank you, sir, for saying something nice about me. I'm gonna keep going. What else? I'm basically just gonna talk about four other things about the final finale episode of Game of Thrones. One of which, the Kingslayer, Jaime Lannister. He is called the Kingslayer because he killed the king, the Targaryen king. I gotta look that up. You know what I'm talking about, right? He killed the Mad King Targaryen. Oh, Aerys the Second, the Mad King Aerys the Second, who is Daenerys's father, and how Jaime Lannister killed Aerys before he could basically blow up King's Landing and everybody in it with the wildfire. That green goop under the whole city. It reminds me so much of napalm, which is a very, very, very bad thing, especially if you know any history of like the Vietnam War. I'm talking about real life now. Just the sludgy, flammable gloop that they would drop, and it would stick on people while it was burning, and it would burn people alive. Just horrible stuff. The wildfire reminds me of it. So Jaime Lannister already killed the Mad King, and Jaime Lannister prevented the Mad King from igniting the wildfire. Now this time Cersei has ignited some wildfire. We think she didn't get all of it. I think she only ignited the ones right under the sept. And will Jaime be the Kingslayer once again? And this time the Queenslayer? Because there's that the foreshadowing forecast where somebody told Cersei when she was younger that she will outlive her kids, which came true, and she will die by the hands of her brother. And she has two brothers left, Jaime and Tyrion. So I wonder, is Tyrion gonna be killing Cersei? But then again, Cersei's got a whole bunch of people that want to get to her. Arya being one of them, and pretty much everybody. Sansa, Jon Snow, Brienne. List goes long. Marjorie's grandmother, and of course the Sand Snakes, the Dornish women, because her mountain crushed the skull of their brother Oberyn. So, who's gonna get Cersei? It's almost like, it would be nice if she had a clone, or like alternate realities where we can see Cersei get killed by different people every time. It's cathartic. It's like This is not real, folks. It's fictional. So it's fun to just savor it when it happens. Just like when Ramsay Bolton got his. You just savor it. You know, the actor's probably the nicest guy in the world, just like a Joffrey. When Joffrey got it, it's like, savor it. But the Joffrey actor, they said he's the nicest guy in the world. So, you know, keep to our fiction. Keep violence in fiction, not in real life. I sound like a tree hugger. So, okay, so that's Jaime and Cersei, and that's just weird, isn't it? They have 3 kids together, and now Jaime's thinking, do I have to kill my sister now? Oh. All right, so the next one, it got me thinking, okay, Jon Snow, in whatever episode that was where he died, his own men stabbed him to death, and then the next episode, he comes back to life. Now remember, it was when Melisandre tried to work her magic on him, it looked like she had failed. And it wasn't until hours later, everybody was sleeping, when Jon Snow came back to life. Was that Melisandre's doing? Was that the Lord of Light's doing? Or, I'm thinking now, Jon Snow, we all know, by the way, did I say spoiler full? Spoiler. Like, don't listen to this podcast unless you've seen Game of Thrones season 6 finale. Jon Snow is revealed to be a Targaryen. Unless they totally fooled us, Jon Snow is the son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark. Rhaegar Targaryen being Daenerys' father, and Lyanna Stark being Jon Snow's aunt. So Daenerys and Jon Snow are related. Okay, they are blood relations. So if Daenerys can walk through a fire and not get killed, and it seems like she's been a whole bunch of situations, this little blonde girl who's naked half the time because she jumps into a fire and her clothes burn off, and she has no weapons except for her dragons. But it's like people are afraid of her just because she seems like she's invulnerable, right? Does Jon Snow have all or any of those powers? Remember the Battle of the Bastards, the episode before? He's got 1 million of those arrows coming at him, and he didn't get hit once, right? And when he finally got the point blank 3 shots by Ramsay Bolton, he was able to block it with a shield, no problem. It's now, I know you're going to say, well, he can't be immortal because his own men stabbed him. So, but I'm thinking, I don't know, maybe that would be the point where, okay, he's not immortal. Maybe the Lord of Light did bring him back to life. Maybe. I don't know. Hopefully they'll explain this more. It's like, how come his own men can go sneak up on him and stab him to death, but dozens of arrows can't get to him? Ramsay Bolton's army, right? So that would be interesting. So Melisandre, and Phil and I talked earlier about Melisandre is now on the road alone on a horse because she got kicked out of Winterfell, never to come back. And Arya is on her way to Winterfell, or wherever, to scratch names off her list of people she wants to kill, one of whom is Melisandre, the Red Woman. So that's going to be fun if they run into each other. So, okay, so there. The third bullet point. I watched a YouTube video regarding Varys. It's if you look it up, do a Google search or whatever, YouTube search for Varys, Game of Thrones. I think that's all you need to type in. It's Vaorys. And supposedly he is bald because he has blonde hair like a Targaryen, because he is a Targaryen and he's related to Daenerys. And his whole end game is to manipulate everybody to get Daenerys to the Iron Throne, supposedly. Or does he want to be on the Iron Throne, or does he want to be the hand of the Iron Throne, the right hand person, the advisor? So, the fact that he is a eunuch, he was castrated when he was a child. There's something to be said about that. In history, they usually they castrate boys if they are going to be servants of the king, so that because they don't want their sexuality to get in the way of business for the kingdom. Like, they have bigger goals for this person, so they actually castrate the boy. And this has happened in China. Zheng He, Zhenghe. He's a Chinese admiral that sailed around the world. Supposedly, there's like records of it. Right around 1411, right around that time, which is like 70, 80 years before Columbus discovered America. Zheng He took his fleet of like 1,000 ships, each ship bigger than Christopher Columbus's Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria ships put together. Like, you can put all of Columbus's 3 ships on the deck of one of Zheng He's big ships. And Zheng He was castrated when he was a boy. They wanted him to serve the emperor, the Chinese emperor, when he was younger. I'm hoping I'm getting all this information. I looked it up. I remember reading about this years ago, and I did a whole bunch of research on it. And I refreshed my knowledge of it recently. I hope I'm right in terms of, like, they actually groomed Zheng He to be the prime servant to the emperor. And so, he became this admiral of the Chinese fleet, this massive fleet that dwarfs anything in ancient history. So when I saw the final scene in the Game of Thrones season 6 finale episode, it totally reminded me of Zheng He. So this fictional show, Game of Thrones, reminded me of the factual history of what I read about Zheng He, and Varys is part of that fleet. Varys, this eunuch who got castrated, and he is now the advisor to arguably the most powerful person in Westeros right now, with all her fleet. So let me check. I'm gonna check make sure. Okay, good. Nobody. So I gotta go check my cell phone to see if somebody's like had an emergency and needed my attention. So far nothing. Thank you. So that's, I think, people are focusing on Daenerys, Jon Snow, Tyrion, Arya, Sansa, and Baelish, and I guess the White Walker, the White King, and who else? And Cersei, the Lannisters. And I think, well, the ones who are paying attention, I think they see Varys is kind of behind the scenes with all of this. Keep in mind, Varys is the one who smuggled Tyrion out of King's Landing after Tyrion killed his own father. So it's like Varys is everywhere, and he's supposedly this chubby, slow, cannot fight guy, but it seems like he knows people everywhere. It's like he just popped up in the middle of Dorne, like, oh, okay, fire and blood, let's go join Daenerys, like out of nowhere, right? Did they know him before? The Sand Snakes and the Dornish women and Marjorie Tyrell's grandmother, the Highgarden people. Like, all of a sudden, Varys has just got everybody together, and he kind of, in one way, he is more influential than Peter Baelish, even though Peter Baelish, Littlefinger, kind of lucked out with bringing the Knights of the Vale to go rescue Jon Snow's army at the Battle of Winterfell, the previous episode. So, Phil and I had a discussion. It's like, who's the more influential? Who has the more power? Who can get more stuff done, Varys or Littlefinger? And it looks like Varys can really get more stuff done. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. And I love this. This last episode reminded me of... the Battle of the Bastards is the big party where everybody goes crazy and trashes the house. And this episode 6 finale, the last one that we just saw, is like the cleanup crew. Where actually the first 15-20 minutes where Cersei kind of blows up everybody is sort of the one last push where everybody's jumping off the roof into the pool. And people are borderline, needing an ambulance because they overconsumed whatever they were consuming. And the rest of the show, the last 45 to 50 whatever minutes, is the cleanup crew. It's like, oh, we got a mess. Let's tidy this stuff up, and then let's kind of just like keep it calm. Oh, we got one more crazy person. You got Arya gonna, slit Walder Frey's throat. Well, Frey. But for the most part, it was a calm episode with more talking and planning and preparing. Just the scene with Sam in the big library, that was a welcome feeling. It's like, oh, good, okay. It's like, please don't have anything jump out of the corner. Like, please, no violence. Don't burn down the library. By the way, the library over there reminded me of the library at Alexandria. This really happened. It's is it Greek? Greek. The great library of Alexandria that burned down, and a lot of the knowledge that we should know now burned down with it. Look it up, kids. It's good for you. It's learning stuff. The library at Alexandria, supposedly with Plato, either was there or taught there or has his writings there. Aristotle, the great philosophers, etc., 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 as they say, when I can't find any more examples. So, Library at Alexandria reminded me of the library at Old Town, and I hope nothing happens to it. Please. Everything else seems to get destroyed in Westeros. Just leave this one alone. So that's good. Okay, I went off on a little tangent. That's pretty much it. Game of Thrones. If you want me to hear me talking more about each individual scene or characters, check out the podcast to be named later with me and Phil. I'll be posting. Actually, we recorded that earlier today. I'm recording this one-person episode, The Daily Night, tonight. So I'm hoping to post both of these either by Tuesday or Wednesday, later in the week, depending on how much stuff I have. So, okay, that's it. And then, well, not that's it, but next bullet point. Take a breath. Take a breath, man. Take a breath, Jordo. Hold on. Okay. Take a drink of water. X-Men Apocalypse, quick thoughts. I don't think I talked about X-Men Apocalypse movie on the Daily Night. I finally got to see it after like 2 weeks. I told you, I've been busy. So, with especially with summer happening, we had a big fundraiser 3 weeks ago, and then my dad had like a Thanksgiving celebration for his recovery from the surgery. That was 2 weeks ago. And then there was another thing happening last weekend, like a family gathering. So every week for the last 4 weeks, it's been crazy. So, forgive me. I missed podcasting. Just being able to hear that intro music and, this is the Daily Night for Monday. It was like, I haven't been doing this for more than a month. I miss it. So, thank you again for listening. Okay, so next, X-Men Apocalypse. I got to see it. Quick thoughts on it. If you are a comic book reader, okay, I personally love the movie. Um, I think X Men: Days of Future Past is still a better movie. Um, but let me see, X Men, the very first X Men is up there. I don't really have a favorite X Men movie, but I have like tied for top the three or four that are tied for the best is Days of Future Past, the original X Men. I'd say probably X Men First Class even, and then this movie. Um, but what I'm see, I read comic books. I've read comic books. I still do read comic books, and X Men Apocalypse feels more like a comic book movie in terms of pacing, in terms of how they introduce the characters. In a movie, there's a certain flow to it, but as opposed to a comic book, it's not like reading a comic book. So I think I know where some of the critics did not like X Men Apocalypse that much because it wasn't as much a movie as it is a comic book movie. So it has if you've ever read a comic book, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's paced differently than a regular movie. So if you approach it as a regular movie, I'd say it's probably like a 7.5 out of 10. I hate putting numbers, by the way, but if you have to put a number on it. But if you approach it as a comic book movie, I think it's like 9 out of 10, easily. It is like how the X-Men comic books in its best of days it was portrayed. It was fun. There's a certain childlike feel to it. It wasn't too serious, although they dealt with serious issues. They never got as deep as Days of Future Past or even First Class. There's a certain, for want of a better word, there's a certain shallowness to it. But I'm talking about comic book fun level where you don't want to spend back when I was young, it was like 35 cents for an X-Men comic book. You don't want to spend 35 cents and get depressed the hell out of yourself. You don't read comic books because of that, right? You read them because you're a teenager, or you're a very young teenager, or even like 8-9 years old, and you just want to see people with superpowers doing good things and doing neat stuff, neato stuff. And I think X-Men Apocalypse is that neato X-Men movie, and they did it with respect. The movie was made with respectfully to the X-Men comic book franchise. So, in case anybody's wondering and knows the name, Chris Claremont to me is the X-Men writer. He with Stan Lee created the X-Men, as far as I know. I met both of them in person when I was a kid at a convention back when you didn't have to pay like $30 just to get an autograph. So I actually got both of their autographs on an X-Men graphic novel for free. Basically, you buy the graphic novel, you stand in line for like 15 minutes, and you got to talk to them. You shook their hands if you want. Back then, there was no digital cameras or cell phones, so I couldn't take a picture with them. I didn't have a camera with me. I don't think I even knew that they were at the convention. It was just like a surprise. But I got to meet the both of them, Stan Lee and Chris Claremont. I still have the signed X-Men. What is it? X-Men Compendium. It's sort of like a bigger size comic book. But it's that feel of when I was a kid. It made me feel like a kid again, watching X-Men Apocalypse, and in a good way. So, yay, movie. Star Trek Beyond, final trailer number 3 came out today. I really liked it. I don't know how the movie is going to be. I'm looking forward to seeing the movie. I hope it does great. Because Star Trek deserves good things to happen to it. The franchise, the fans. Star Trek needs Star Wars money, because there's so much potential for Star Trek that it's not getting the attention or the budget or the respect. I belong to a Star Trek club, and there's a certain depth and is the word content. There's there's meaning to Star Trek. There's a certain weight and gravitas even to Star Trek that is part of its constant with Star Trek. Whereas with Star Wars is more fun. Star Wars is more a movie, whereas Star Trek is as much a discussion and social issues and philosophy. You get that a little bit with Star Wars with the Jedi stuff, and a little bit here and there. But for the most part, Star Wars is the spectacle, the space opera, the beautiful imagery, and the amazing music, and the space battles. So Star Trek Beyond final trailer. I like the piano music, and I keep thinking that piano music works in a whole lot of trailers. I wrote this down. What is it? Star Wars: The Force Awakens had that piano music at the beginning. Captain America: Civil War, one of the trailers, I think the final trailer before the movie actually came out, had piano music. There's another movie that came out. X-Men Apocalypse. I think the final trailer for X-Men Apocalypse had the piano music again. I even think Independence Day. But it's like it works, so just keep going. I don't mind it. It's cool with me. It's almost the quiet piano music is almost the Game of Thrones. The first 15-20 minutes of the finale episode of this latest Game of Thrones during the Cersei planning her thing. There was a piano going on, and I'm totally cool with it. Like, I play the piano. I am more sensitive to when these things happen, so I kind of pay more attention. It's like, there's the piano. That's kind of cool. So, Star Trek Beyond final trailer. If they can juxtapose, contrast the action scenes with the not introverted, they're reflective, more thinking. If they can show that and also mix that with the action, then you got a good Star Trek movie. That's the best Star Trek movie, is when they have 50% action, fun stuff, and 50% thinking, make yourself think about life and ponder stuff and philosophy and kind of work things out in your mind, and a strategy chess game sort of thing. If you can put those two together and make them work, you'll have a really awesome Star Trek movie. So hopefully that's the movie we get in, July 22nd. Please make it happen. J.J. Abrams, you're our only hope. He's producing the movie. So, what was it? I heard Justin Lin, the current director of the latest Star Trek movie, is thinking about making Akira. A live-action Akira. So, Mark Ellis on Collider Movie Talk, they asked him, what do you think about Justin Lin directing an Akira movie? And he said, ask me on July 22nd after I've seen the latest Star Trek movie, and I'll have a better opinion for you. And I second that response. Same thing with me. Hopefully, Star Trek Beyond is going to be awesome, and we get more. We get Star Trek 4, Star Trek Beyond. So we're at 45 minutes into the podcast, kind of going on the home stretch. Hopefully, Justice League behind the scenes. I have a link on the podcast webpage. Excuse me. Ugh. I burped like Adele at the concert. What is it? People, these super duper rock stars, they burp and then it's all over YouTube and they talk about it on the news. Good God. Beyonce, what did she do? I think she sneezed, right? She sneezed and it was all over the evening news. And then Adele burped like yesterday during a concert. And it was all over the news. All right, fine. I can burp. So I'm not going to wind up with 22 million hits on YouTube. I'm not bitter. Okay. Justice League. I'm really, really looking forward to this movie now. After I read and heard Collider's Steve Frosty Weintraub, if you look up, do a search for Collider.com, they do the Collider Movie Talk. They're affiliated. Steve Frosty, his nickname, Weintraub visited the set and also got to see a little bit of the footage of the new Justice League movie. And from what I've heard him say about it, it looks very promising. They are a little bit more lighthearted, a lighthearted tone with it. The Flash scenes, he said, were amazing. I have linked to the article, so go read the article. Also look up Collider Heroes, where he was a guest on it. And he talks about, like 15 minutes, he talks about what he saw behind the scenes. So, great stuff. In short, what I heard was they had fun with it. They had a good back and forth dialogue between Batman and the Flash. We get to see them show off their powers in a cool way, not in an annoying, obvious way, but in a cool way. Ben Affleck got to show more of his Batman chops, acting skills and stuff. What was it? The Flash's Ezra Miller works totally. He is a perfect contrast to Ben Affleck's brooding Batman. So Ezra Miller's more a lighthearted sort of thing. And it makes sense that they didn't get Grant Gustin from TV's The Flash to be in the movies The Flash. I think the chemistry supposedly works better with Ezra Miller. So looking forward to that. Jon Bernthal on The Punisher. He's got a new article, kind of a little bit of clickbait because the title says Jon Bernthal says you didn't see the Punisher in the Daredevil season 2. That wasn't the Punisher. Not really. What it meant was you're supposed to see, like, read the headline and say, "Oh my God, did we get fooled?" And know what Jon Bernthal actually said. He's the actor who portrays the Punisher. He said that you haven't seen the Punisher, the superhero Punisher as we know him, because what you've seen is Frank Castle. Basically, the figure that you saw, the character that you saw in Daredevil Season 2 is still Frank Castle. And his goal was to avenge his family. And he got to do that. He got to get back at the people that destroyed his family life. His next step, where he actually becomes the Punisher, where the Punisher deals justice to whoever is not following justice, no matter who you are. It's not a vendetta or it's not a revenge thing. Like Frank Castle in Daredevil Season 2, Frank Castle was taking revenge on those who hurt Frank Castle. In the Punisher series, the upcoming Punisher, supposedly he will just dole out justice like a Batman. It's not because he's trying to get revenge. He's just gonna deal with the what do you call it, the vigilantism. Okay, so it's still a good article, and it kind of makes me wonder. I was like, oh my God, okay, from what we've seen of Jon Bernthal as Frank Castle already, what in the hell are we going to get when he becomes the Punisher? Can you imagine that? That's, yeah. I'm not going to think about it. I'm not even going to think about when it's going to happen. It's when all 13 episodes are out, I'll just re-up my Netflix and I'll calmly watch it and not get excited for it, because I'm getting excited for way too many things already. I don't have any more excitement. Yeah, I do. I'm a geek. I'm excited for everything. So, yeah, Jon Bernthal's a Punisher. Hopefully they keep going. How awesome it is. Suicide Squad's fantastic new posters. Go check it out. They're very comic booky. They have the halftone. For those of you who don't know what halftone is, I kind of barely do. I went to design school, so I kind of know about this stuff. When you see comic books and you look at the comic book coloring in old newspapers, if you look really close at the art, you will see that the colors are made up of little tiny dots. And you put those dots together or you space them apart, and you can make the yellow look more yellow or darker. And if you space them apart, the yellow looks lighter and turns almost into white. It's the density of the number of dots within in a certain area that determines how concentrated or how dark or light that color is. So if you want a total black, you have all the black dots bunched up together right next to each other. If you want a 50% gray, then you space out the black dots so there's as much white as there is black. And you get your 50% gray. So why did I get into that? Sorry, it was my design tangent. But yeah, the new Suicide Squad movie posters have that feel to them, and it's perfect because they're a comic book movie, and it's also it's not really like the Suicide Squad comic book, but it's more lighthearted, and I think I love that Photoshop effect. It's like one of my to-do lists in the near future is to play around with Photoshop so I can get that kind of special effect, the comic book special effect. So because it's fun, it's just it's one more fun thing. I would totally get those posters and put it up on my wall, or at the very least put it up as a wallpaper on my computer or my not laptop, my cell phone. So okay, so go check out, do a Google search, Suicide Squad's new posters, and you'll see them. They're very colorful. The Joker poster is fantastic. It feels almost like graffiti. So, okay, I'm gonna do the pedigree of Star Wars last. I'm gonna jump on what's on my DVR to watch. So my voice is starting to go. In order, what I have, like I set my DVR to automatically record, and then I go watch it, whenever. Number 1, Game of Thrones. Number 2, The Walking Dead. Number 3, CW's The Flash. Number 4, Suits. If you haven't checked out this show yet, go check it out. You may like it, you may love it, you may not like it at all. Suits is about, it's not geeky comic booky, but it's about the 2 lawyers. One is a real lawyer, and one is so good that he has fooled everybody to think that he's a lawyer, and the real lawyer has finagled the system to get the younger fake lawyer to become a partner, or to be a lawyer in the law firm. It's tight. It feels like, I don't know if you've ever watched it way back in the day, LA Law. It feels like not Hill Street Blues, LA Law, and a little bit of Law and Order feel to it, and very snappy dialogue. Good show. Okay, so the Suits, and then Star Wars Rebels, of course, on Disney XD. Star Wars Rebels, you got to follow, Sabine and Ezra and and Kanan. So watch, because they are tied to the Star Wars universe. They are canon, CANON, and Star Wars Rebels on Disney XD. They're on hiatus right now. I don't know when they're coming back, but I got it set so when they do come back, I don't have to set my recording. After Star Wars Rebels, there's Billions on Showtime. Billions with Paul Giamatti, and I keep forgetting his name. He's the red-headed, tall, skinny dude from Band of Brothers, HBO special. Awesome. Great show. It feels like if Wall Street the movie had a baby with American Psycho, and it was PG-13, and it was set in the New York, in a stockbroker setting, then you would have Billions, the Showtime TV show. And then after that, I have Battlebots. I'm going to talk about Battlebots in a little bit. And after that, last is Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Those are basically the geekiest shows I have that I on my DVR to watch. And that's 8 shows, and that's the most I could watch are those 8. After that, then I get in trouble for not having enough time to watch anything. I used to have The Last Ship on recording, automatically recording, but I just don't have time for it. And it feels like season 1 is fantastic. I would say season 1, it was the best show on TV. I mean, that's saying a lot, maybe, except for Game of Thrones. But The Last Ship was at the very maybe top 3 of my favorite shows of the last year season of its season 1. But season 2, I've seen 2 episodes so far. It's like it looks like they kind of ran out of story. I don't know, because the big crisis is over. Now they got to go through phase 2, and they got to almost set up a new scenario to come up with conflicts. And it's like this isn't as exciting as season 1, so I'm kind of getting bored. It's like The Walking Dead. Walking Dead? How many seasons is Walking Dead now? 7 or 8. A couple of those seasons were really boring. I hate to say it, but you know what I'm talking about. So, and what else? Okay, so I'm going to jump to Battlebots. Battlebots just started. They're in the qualifying rounds. They usually show a 2-hour episode. I forget what day it's on, but like from 9 to 11 or 8 to 10. So what I do is I DVR it. I hate to say this because the advertisers and the sponsors are going to hate me for telling you this. In case will you please sponsor the Daily Night? I was like, no, you bashed our Battlebots commercial, so we're not going to sponsor you. Okay, sorry, but I would record 2 hours of Battlebots and then just fast forward to the fights. Because I don't care about you talking about the history of each of the workers. I don't care. I don't care if they, he worked 3 jobs as a janitor, and he, scraped the scale off of old buildings, and he inhaled asbestos and drank poison. Now he's building a BattleBot. No, just show me the battle. The battle is 2 minutes, 3 minutes long. So I wind up watching a 2-hour episode of Battlebots in probably 20 minutes. And I rewind and I watch, some of the battles over again. By the way, of course, my favorites are the spinners, because they just Cuisinart the hell out of everything. And it's like a spinner versus a spinner. Just shit's going to fly everywhere. It's fantastic. Or you mix there was one, I forgot the name of the robot, but it was had a spinner or a grinder up front and a flipper out the back. So if it didn't get you by grinding you to bits, it flipped you over and then ground you while you're upside down. And I think it won. So those are my favorite. I don't care about the ones that are fancy schmancy and or run around. I just make something spin really, really fast. Or even the cutters. I was like, yeah, okay, the cutters are fine, but they're kind of fragile a lot because the blades have to be sharp and the blades get caught. So just get one of these really strong, heavy spinners with bolts attached to it. The bolts, the really, non-sharp bolts, but you spin them fast enough and they become knives. So, really hurtful knives. So, I don't know what that says about my personality, but give me the spinners. Battlebots. And then Ben Affleck's Batman movie is more of a detective movie. That's on the news. Yes, please. Like Batman Year One, or more. I always told my friends, what kind of Batman movie I want to see, especially with Ben Affleck's going to direct and star in it. Do Ben Affleck's The Town. If you haven't seen The Town yet, a fantastic movie. It would be a good double feature with Heat, with Robert De Niro and Al Pacino. Watch a double feature of The Town and Heat, and then make that into a detective movie, and then put Batman in it, and that's the Batman movie I want to see. So, all right, so almost done. We are at 59 minutes. Let me go try to get this done in like 5 minutes. The pedigree of Star Wars. When somebody asks me, what the hell do you mean? Okay, now I'm talking about the pedigree of Star Wars 4 through 7 because David, call back, shout out, David, the president of the United Geek Federation, asked me, why am I not worried about the upcoming Star Wars movies? And I told him they are back to the same formula that they used for the original trilogy, for Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. My meaning is, for big examples, Lawrence Kasdan. He wrote the screenplay for Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. He also wrote for the Raiders of the Lost Ark, the 3 Indiana Jones movies back in the 80s. He wrote a whole bunch of great other movies. He directed a couple of really great movies. One is Silverado, one of the best cowboy movies, westerns I've ever seen. Modern day, not modern day, but it was filmed in the 80s, which is kind of modern compared to the old John Wayne stuff. Lawrence Kasdan. So Lawrence Kasdan wrote the Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. He did not write any of the prequel movies. And then he came back and wrote Episode 7, and I think he's also writing Episode 8 and the Han Solo movie. So you got that pedigree. John Williams has been there for all 7 movies, so he's always a constant. So it's they haven't lost him, and he's also writing Episode 8. It seems like, from what he said. The directors now, the pedigree. I think George Lucas was the director of the original Star Wars back in 1977, and people say, well, if he could direct Star Wars back then, why did the prequels feel different? And a lot of people say that the prequels were not as good as the original trilogy or even The Force Awakens. There's gonna be arguments, but you know what I'm talking about. Even though George Lucas directed the original Star Wars and then he directed the prequels, how come the prequels aren't as good as the original Star Wars? My answer to that is George Lucas did not create the vision for his movie by himself in the original Star Wars. Even though he directed Star Wars, he had the help of his then wife, Marcia Lucas. Gary Kurtz was the producer of the original Star Wars. And George Lucas surrounded himself with a whole bunch of professionals, seasoned professionals, and who did not give him carte blanche to do anything he wished for the original trilogy. He actually had to discuss, to put it mildly. They had arguments and fights, but they worked as a team. It wasn't just George Lucas's vision and he was a director and anything he said 100% followed his way. No, he collaborated with a team on Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi, and together they made the original trilogy. When the prequels happened, it was literally George Lucas's vision. It was his directing. It was his casting. Nobody argued with him. Harrison Ford is famous for arguing with George Lucas, and Harrison Ford was not in the prequels. They had a whole bunch they had big stars, but they did not argue with George Lucas. His producer in the prequels was not combative. Gary Kurtz actually met the guy back in '83 during a convention. We just stood in the back of the room, kind of talked for a little bit. Huge guy, looks like an Amish dude. He's got the Amish beard, but amazing, soft-spoken guy. He fought tooth and nail for Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back to not be 100% of the movie that George Lucas wanted it to be. And they actually fought, and what happened is George Lucas fired him after Empire because they had so many clashes, and also the Empire kind of went over the budget, time and money-wise. And so for Return of the Jedi, Howard Kazanjian came in as the producer. And to me, the strongest Star Wars movies, this is the way I rank them. The best I say tied for first is Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back. Each have their own strengths, but I tie them for first place. And then The Force Awakens, and then Return of the Jedi, and then the prequels, probably Revenge of the Sith, Phantom Menace, and then Attack of the Clones, in that order. What was, in terms of the crew, the pedigree of Star Wars, they did not bring back, Gary Kurtz wasn't there. The editors of the original Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, there was Richard Chew, Paul Hirsch, Marcia Lucas, Jim Bloom, and Roger Watts. None of them worked on the prequels. And Frank Oz, the puppeteer, was in Empire and Jedi, but Yoda was not a puppet in the prequels. He was more CGI. Also, Ralph McQuarrie, who is the original visionary, the visual design. He's the one that basically designed the X-Wings and TIE Fighters and Darth Vader and Stormtroopers from his original paintings, where George Lucas pitched the idea of the original Star Wars to 20th Century Fox and whatever other studios would listen to him. And they finally bought on the idea of Star Wars because of Ralph McQuarrie's paintings. So, and Ralph McQuarrie's ships and stuff, they used them in the in the original trilogy, but there wasn't as much Ralph McQuarrie in the prequels in terms of visual design. Even though the prequels are beautiful, but it didn't feel I don't know if it's just me, but didn't you feel like the ships in the prequels, even though the timeline of the prequels is before Star Wars: A New Hope, the ships look newer. It's more sleek. It didn't have that used look to them, right? The prequels, they were more shiny and kind of new looking. So, and then you notice in The Force Awakens, they're back to the old used looking ship design that they originated in the original trilogy. So you got they kind of actually, for The Force Awakens, I read that the art team for The Force Awakens went back to the old Ralph McQuarrie designs and took some of the unused designs from Ralph McQuarrie and applied it to The Force Awakens. So that's why you have that visual continuity from episodes 4, 5, 6, and 7. So, for better or worse, or whatever you think of the prequels, I'm not trying to I'm trying really hard not to make anybody feel bad, but it just, in terms of consistency, or just the team and the style of Star Wars. It seems like Star Wars, starting from episode 7 until 8 and 9, probably beyond, it looks like they're going to go back to the formula that they used in the original trilogy, and that's a good thing. So, and of course you got Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, and Carrie Fisher, and you got them, and it's a more collaborative, I guess. That's probably the best way to describe it. The pedigree of the Star Wars movies that work, the most popular Star Wars movies, the pedigree is based on collaboration of the best professionals in the business, and not just George Lucas working by himself and everybody saying yes to him. So I don't want to name any names that might make that person feel bad. I know of some names of people who worked on the prequels that aren't working in the business anymore. I'm not going to talk about them. I'm going to focus on the good stuff, the original trilogy and episode 7, 8, and keep going. And I think Rogue One is sticking to that collaborative style, and I think that's why so many reshoots, so many callbacks, and it's making the news. Like, all these reshoots, the movie must be a mess. I don't think so. I think it's just they want to make it perfect. And if you want to make something perfect, and I've learned this in the design business, or especially with designers and artists, like, they just keep working on their product until the very last moment. they're squeezing every ounce of creativity and style and polish, and trying to make everything perfect. God is in the details, they say. So I'm not worried. I think I think it'll be fine. But we'll see. It's okay. It's like there's the fictional stuff that we watch in movies, and then there's real life, and the real life is always more important. But it's good to have these distractions, these fictional things, where people actually, where people die and get hurt, and it's made up. It's okay. It's made up. And on that note, that is the end of episode 41, and I'm at 1 hour 10 minutes. That's pretty good. So this is Gerardo San Diego. You can catch me The Daily Night, thedailynight.net, The Daily Night with a K.net. You can catch me on Facebook at facebook.com/thedailynight with a K. I'm on Instagram and Twitter and all these other things. But probably the best place for you to find The Daily Night is either through iTunes. You can do a search for either my name or just search for The Daily Night, or any podcast aggregator app that you have. I use I use two of them, Podcast Republic and something else. I'm there, and on iTunes. So you can find me on iTunes also. But in terms of getting all the information, or at least a place to start, go to thedailynight.net, thedailynight with a K.net, and I'll have links to the Facebook and Twitter and all that other stuff on that website. So whole bunch of other new things coming up soon. We have so many events coming up. I'm going to talk about one of the events we're trying to put together is Geek Bowling. So we're trying to get the Geek Federation and all the geeks to bowl, and of course the proceeds go to Making Biscuits Cat Rescue, and we're going to also look for other charities, like Veterans Administration charities, senior citizens charities, what else? Save the Children, orphanages, cancer awareness, you name it. We're trying to have fun and be helpful at the same time, and it gives us a good excuse to geek out, but it also makes us not have to feel guilty about geeking out because we are doing it for a good cause. So hopefully we keep going, and we just thank you for putting up with me for yet another hour plus, and I will talk to you soon. Hopefully I'll try to carve up more time to do more podcasts more frequently. So until next time, this is Gerardo San Diego. May the force be with you. Thank you very much.